Hello students. In the last lecture, we started with the unit epidemiology. In that, we saw its definition, scope and application. Now moving ahead, we will see the next objectives, incidence and prevalence rates, mortality and morbidity rates. So let's begin. Incidence rate. It measures the rate of occurrence of new cases of a disease or condition. It's the number of instances of a factor during a given period, whether it be a day, month, year, or a decade, in a specified population. Okay, it tells us how many cases of a particular factor have been suffered by a specified population in a given period of time. It allows us to determine a person's probability of being diagnosed with a disease during a given period of time, or it might tell us how patterns of a condition within a population change over time. Fine. Now, what are its uses? It is useful for taking actions such as to control disease. Second, for research into etiology and pathogenesis, distribution of diseases, and efficacy of preventive and therapeutic measures. Fine. If the incidence rate is increasing, it might indicate failure or ineffectiveness of the current control programs. And rising incidence rate might suggest the need for a new disease control or a preventive program, or that reporting practices has to be improved. Fine. A change or fluctuation in the incidence of disease may also mean a change in the etiology of disease. For example, change in the agent or host and environmental characteristics. Fine? Understood? Next, prevalence rate. Prevalence rate is the proportion of cases in the population at a given time rather than rate of occurrence of new cases. Fine, means in this there will be both existing, like old as well as new, both. Fine. Incidence rate always conveys information about the risk of contracting the disease, whereas prevalence rate indicates how widespread the disease is. Fine, these are the formulas by which we can calculate prevalence rate as well as incidence rate. Now, what are the uses of prevalence rate? Prevalence rate helps to estimate the magnitude of health and disease problems in the community and identify potential high-risk population. Fine. Second, prevalence rates are especially useful for administrative and planning purposes. For example, hospital beds, manpower needs, rehabilitation facilities. Okay? Understood? Moving ahead. Now, mortality rates. Now, as you know, death, it is an unique and universal event. Now, age at death and cause provide an instant depiction of health status. Fine. Now, as survival improves with modernization and population's age, mortality measures do not give an adequate picture of a population's health status. So, how do we measure now? Crude death rate, specific death rate, case fatality rate, proportional mortality rate, survival rate, adjusted or standardized rate. Okay. So this is how we measure mortality rate. Morbidity rates. Morbidity refers to the disease and illness, injuries and disabilities in a population. It's a data on frequency and distribution of illness can aid in controlling its spread, and in some cases may lead to identification of its causes. Now, the major method for gathering morbidity data is through surveillance and sample surveys. Okay. Both these procedures are costly and therefore selectively they are used in developing country, and they are setting together for gathering the data on health problems of major importance. So two indicators they follow. One is incidence rate, second is prevalence rate. We have already studied what is incidence rate and what is prevalence rate. Fine. I will provide you with all the notes. So don't get confused. If you have any doubts, do ask me. Thank you.